11:05 this morning. I want to give you a look at what the southernmost point at Key West is looking like this morning. Let's pull that up here for just a second for the folks. It's looking a little dreary out there. I'm sure we'll pull it up here in just a sec. It's looking a little dreary out there, a little bit windy. There it is. Take a look at that. But the rain did just start a couple of minutes ago. It's not looking too bad just yet, but of course, as Hurricane Ian gets a little bit closer, we can probably expect those conditions to change. Now, I want to go ahead and shift a little bit up to the north where Tampa is. I-4 outside of this city last night. So many residents are trying to get out. It was jam-packed on I-4 going east, moving away from the hurricane. Last night about 9:45. There are evacuations in place for some high-risk sections of Tampa, including the Hillsborough and Pinellas counties neighborhoods. I want to give you guys a look at what traffic is looking like there this morning. This is I-4 at the Branch Forbes Road. So this is going to be eastbound going towards Orlando. It is not looking too bad just now, but I'm sure that as the day progresses, it's going to continue to pick up. You can see here that it's looking pretty regular. And also, I've been taking a look at I-75 along Alligator Alley, as well as closer to Orlando and Tampa. Tampa and Orlando looking okay. On I-75 along Alligator Alley, going towards Broward County, you could see those eastbound lanes were getting actually pretty busy near the toll plaza. The westbound lanes were pretty much empty. People are probably trying to get out of the area and head east again. Speaking of moving out of the area, I've been looking at hotels this morning if you were hoping to leave your area where you are. Now, locally, if you're heading a little bit farther inland, such as Clearwater or, somewhere like that, those hotels, it looked like there wasn't a whole lot out there available. So if you are trying to head out to those areas, just a little bit inland, I would double check. Now, heading over to the West Coast, however, not over to the West Coast, back over to the East Coast along West Palm and Miami Beach. All of those had plenty of hotels open and ready to go. Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, just in case you were going to head over that way. Up north, inside of Tampa, there was no hotels available for the most part. The closest that I could find in availability was about 20 to 25 miles outside of Tampa proper. Orlando, it was getting pretty busy, but there are plenty of hotels that I could see out there as well. And 11:08 this morning, if you haven't already, now is the time to head to stores like Walmart, Target, or Publix to get prepared for this storm. This morning, we want to highlight just a few things that you can still grab. For starters, flashlights. Those are going to be of huge value, especially if you're going to go without power, if your power gets knocked out. You can also grab a battery-powered light switch to put around your house. We know that water, one of the first things that got swept off the shelves in the store. But if you can get your hands on a case or even just some tall bottles, you'll be in good shape. Now is also the last day where you'll want to fill up your tub. I know that I'm doing that today when I get home, just in case you lose water. This can help in a lot of ways, including water to flush your toilet. Also, if you've got any patio furniture like chairs, tables, right now is the time to bring them inside. They can easily be tossed up and cause a lot of destruction. There have been long lines for gas and propane, and now the South Trail Fire Department is reminding you that it's important that you know how to store it. The fire department says you should keep gas containers tightly sealed to avoid spills. Those containers must be fuel safety approved. You're going to want to make sure that you leave some room in the top of those containers in case it expands, and store gas far away from other flammable sources, high temperatures, and other chemicals. If you're worried about running out of your medication during the storm, emergency prescription refills are legal during a state of emergency. All you got to do is call your pharmacy, let them know that you need an emergency refill, and then the next one is going to fall back in line with your regular schedule. Now, even though we've given you a lot to think about, these are just a few of the things that you can do to make sure that your family is in the right position as we brace for Hurricane Ian. And we are, of course, going to be on top of it. I'll keep looking at the traffic maps and other hotels and whatnot in the area, but you'll need to know as we go on throughout the morning. 11:10, we'll be right back after this.
If you are just now joining us, we now have that 11 a.m. advisory on Hurricane Ian. It's weakened just slightly as it pushed over the western end of Cuba, but now it's pushing back in to open water. So it's moving over the southeastern Gulf right now, where it is forecast to re-strengthen. Right now, sustained winds, 115 miles per hour, moving to the north at 10 miles per hour, but like I mentioned, it is forecast to continue to strengthen. So let's take a look at the cone, because we did get that updated cone as of the 11 a.m. advisory. It has shifted just a little bit to the south. So let's break it down. So as we go throughout the day today, going to continue to strengthen until it starts to get a little bit closer to southwest Florida. That's where it's going to start to come in contact with a frontal boundary that's just to our north. So what does that mean? Well, it's going to start to break it down a little bit right before it pushes on shore. But regardless, we're still going to have a major hurricane right offshore of southwest Florida, really starting tonight into early tomorrow morning. This is where we're going to start to see that closest path is going to be tomorrow morning through tomorrow afternoon. Now, again, that cone is shifting just to the south, meaning that we could start to see some of those gustier winds starting to push into some of our northern communities, our coastal communities, but still have that question mark of where exactly that's going to be making landfall. But regardless of that, I want you to think impacts as we go throughout the next couple of days. Yeah, we might be seeing some gustier winds, but like what we've been talking about the last couple of days, it's going to be a storm surge event. That's going to be our biggest impact. On top of that, we have that chance for some spin-up tornadoes and also some flooding rainfall. Now, something that just came out, an update with the watches and warnings. Now, what's actually, this is new, I'm seeing now too. So hurricane warning now for DeSoto County as well as Charlotte into Lee County. And you see this purple right here? That's a hurricane watch. That goes for Glades, also into Hendry and Collier County. Now, you can slightly just see the outline there. It's that red outline for our coastal communities. That's that storm surge warning as well, like what we have been talking to you about. So let's take a look at satellite and radar. What are we seeing right now? Well, we're pretty much just squeezed right in the middle of that frontal boundary that you can see just to our north, and also Hurricane Ian that's down to the south. And that's bringing us already those rounds of rainfall, especially down into Collier County. We've been seeing some areas of some pretty steady moderate rainfall as we've gone throughout the morning. So let's take a closer look at what we're seeing right now. Arcadia, Nocatee, starting to see a couple of these heavier downpours starting to push into your community. But again, just been seeing some light, steady rainfall pretty much all morning. That's going into Boca Grande, Bokeelia, also into Matlacha, Flamingo Bay, down into Captiva as well. Pretty much all of southwest Florida, it's all gray. It's going to be a washout all day. So again, Golden Gate, seeing some of those yellows, some moderate rainfall as well, some pockets of heavier rain into Naples, Naples Manor, also into Weaver Station, Carnstown, Everglades City, Clewiston, Moorhaven, seeing some of that steady rain as well. Again, this is going to be the pattern as we head throughout the day. We're watching these bands push in from the south, and they're going to be moving across our area as we head into the next couple of hours. But what I'm really going to be keeping my eyes on, again, we also have a tornado watch. That goes from Collier into Hendry County until 5 p.m. this evening. Now, it's because we have these little cells that are embedded in some of these rain bands. There's already so much spin in the atmosphere. You get these little cells, you can have a quick spin up. It's very common to have these tornado warnings in tropical systems because there are those quick spin ups. So this is what I'm going to be keeping my eyes on right now. We've already had some of the warnings down into the Keys, but again, we do have that tornado watch for Collier and into Hendry until 5 p.m. I want you to have ways to get warnings to your phone. That's going to be your ABC 7 weather app. Such a great tool to have. If a warning is issued, it's going to go right to your specific location. So definitely download that, have a way to get warnings as we go throughout the rest of the day and even into tomorrow. So let's time all of this out. What are we going to be seeing the rest of the day? Well, like I mentioned, it's going to be pretty much a washout. We're going to be just seeing all of these rains, all of this rain pushing into our area. That's going to continue throughout the afternoon into the evening. That's going to be our time frame of those spin-up tornadoes, like I was just telling you about, those little pockets of those cells in the rain bands that are going to be spinning up. So as we head into tomorrow, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, as we get into tomorrow morning, through the afternoon, into the evening, that's when we're going to see that closest pass that Ian is going to have into southwest Florida. So it's going to be starting to get a little bit breezy as we head into tomorrow. And again, some of our northern communities and into DeSoto, Charlotte, and Lee counties, we have that hurricane warning. So that's meaning that hurricane force winds are expected as we go throughout the next 36 hours, or they go until the next 36 hours. But to go a little bit more into the impacts, because again, we've been talking impacts the last couple of days, the flooding rain, the storm surge, again, that's going to be the number one thing with Ian, the damaging wind, and also that chance for some spin-up tornadoes. I'm going to be tossing it over to meteorologist Jim Dickey. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Jesslyn. I want to focus in particularly on the threat for storm surge here in southwest Florida, and I don't think this can be understated at this point. The track this storm is on has the potential to produce some enormous storm surge values that we really haven't seen in recent times in southwest Florida, especially for Lee and Charlotte counties. As you look at the path the storm is taking, and as I look back over the years and think about all of the different stories we've done talking about the threat for storm surge in southwest Florida, we've always pointed to, as far as what you would have to look for a storm that would maximize the storm surge threat, it would be a large, slow-moving, major hurricane making landfall north of our coastline, north of southwest Florida. That's exactly what the forecast calls for with Major Hurricane Ian, a slow-moving major hurricane making landfall as a weakening Category 4, but even if it's weakening, it's not going to matter. It's still going to have that large wind field around it. It's still going to push around a whole lot of water as it moves its way onshore. I know storm surge is a confusing concept for many of you. I hope this little model here sort of helps to demonstrate what we're talking about. The onshore winds from the hurricane, taking the Gulf of Mexico, which we usually, expect to be back down the coastline, and basically pushing it onshore. So now, think to yourself, Fort Myers Beach. In the event of a storm surge, there's condos that are there, only about 20 feet to 50 feet away from the coast. Now we're talking the ocean is coming up to the bottom of those condos. That's why they're lifted up, by the way. That's why our construction along the coast usually features those raised platforms to account for the threat of storm surge. So many of you, I've been getting questions. I'm in a high rise in that storm surge zone A. I'm on the 6th, 8th, 10th floor. Will I be okay? Yeah, most likely. These structures are very sound, everything well built here. But, at the very least, as that water comes in and stays there for 12 plus hours, it might be underwater down at the ground. So you'll be stuck where you are. That's why we have these evacuation orders in place. As this water comes up and could stay for quite some time, it'd be best to get out of those areas where the water comes up. That's one benefit we have to being in a hurricane zone, is that usually we have some warning before these impacts hit. In this case, we're still talking 24 hours from now before that water begins to come up. And we know it's likely to come up in especially zones A and B in Lee and Charlotte counties. There's why. You have to think about how winds go in orientation to that hurricane. Around the center, winds flow counterclockwise. In the case of Ian, moving into either Charlotte, Sarasota, Manatee County, perhaps as far north as Tampa, regardless, we are in a long duration onshore wind, very strong onshore winds. I want you to think back to Irma if you were here. As that storm came in, the winds were out of the north and east. And you can probably remember all the crazy images we got of many of the bodies of water being drained out by those northeastern winds. That speaks to how this water can move around in these events. And now consider, instead of water being drained out, all of that water being pushed into those same bodies of water from the Gulf of Mexico via those winds. And that's what we're talking about. Timing-wise, the storm surge threat really begins to pick up tomorrow afternoon with those onshore winds. So water starts to rise as early as 9, 10, 11 o'clock tomorrow. We're still going to have those high storm surge values in the afternoon. And by the way, 3 o'clock, right around high tide. So you can add the tidal rise on top of those storm surge values I'm about to show you. And we keep those onshore winds in place. So the water isn't going to be able to escape very quickly. Another storm to talk about, Charlie. That was an extreme wind event and a small storm, very different from this one. That did produce a storm surge, but it was moving so quickly that the water came up, the water went back out. In this case, the water's going to come up, and as we have those steady onshore winds, it's not going to be able to come down for a long time, I think, in all likelihood, all the way into Thursday morning before the center swirls off to our north and we start to watch the winds subside. So let's look at some numbers, and let's go county by county and town by town. We'll begin in Collier County, which, we've been focusing a lot on Lee and Charlotte this morning, I know, and that's because that's the higher chance for the winds to be in hurricane force. Although you're now in a hurricane watch in Collier County, even here, with those steady onshore winds. This is very shallow land in South and coastal Collier County. The water is going to come up. We're talking a 3 to 6 foot storm surge, mainly south of 41. To get your orientation here in Collier County, there is 41 in South Collier. So everybody south to the 10,000 Islands, that includes Everglades City, a 6 foot water level rise. We zoom in on Marco Island. The number's a little bit lower here, but still a 3 to 6 foot rise in a few spots on the island. Naples, similar water level rises. We had water in downtown Naples during Irma, and that storm barely moved north of the Naples area. You're talking a 3 to 6 foot storm surge rise in many of those areas. Into northern Collier County and Lee County. Now you're starting to see these numbers come up even higher. The top of the screen are the heights above ground we're talking. In yellow is 3 feet above the ground. In orange is 6 feet above the ground. In red, 9 feet above the ground. In around Estero Bay, all along those low-lying areas, the water's going to come up about 9 feet, and at times that noses towards 41. Again, to get your orientation, there's 75, there's 41. Note here, this is the Imperial River in around Bonita Springs. That's connected up to the Gulf of Mexico. That water flows up the river and along the banks of the Imperial River. There is likely to be storm surge flooding. This model puts out 3 to 6 feet of water in those areas around the river. South Lee County, the entirety of Estero Island,